Okay, let's dive right in and tackle some of the biggest ideas we have about learning a new language. We're going to break down the key concepts from the book How Languages Are Learned and get right to what really matters. We'll start by looking at three huge beliefs you definitely heard before, and maybe even believe yourself.
First on the list is this idea that to really truly master a language, you have to start as a little kid. The belief that there's some kind of magic window in childhood that just slams shut as we get older. We're going to see if that's actually true. Then there's the whole language gene thing. We all know that person who seems to just soak up new languages like a sponge, while the rest of us are struggling for years. So what's the deal? Are some people just born with a natural gift that most of us don't have? And lastly, this is a massive debate in classrooms everywhere. Mistakes. Should a teacher correct every single error a student makes to stop bad habits from forming, or is there a better way? We're going to dig into what the research actually says about all three of these big questions. To get answers, we need a starting point, a baseline. So we're going to begin with the one language learning journey that is, without a doubt, a universal success story. How every single one of us learned our very first language.
I mean, really think about it for a second. It's an incredible feat. Unlike trying to learn a second language where results can be all over the place, basically every child succeeds at learning their native tongue. It's one of the most complicated things we ever do, and we master it before we can even tie our own shoes.
And what's wild is that this journey follows a super predictable pattern. It doesn't matter what language you're learning. It kicks off with little cooing sounds around 2 months, then it turns into babbling at 6 months. The first magical words pop up around the 1-year mark, and by the time they're 3, kids are making full, complex sentences. So the billion-dollar question is, how does this amazing, almost pre-programmed process actually happen? Well, for decades, researchers have been arguing about it, and their ideas usually fall into one of 3 main camps. First up, you've got the behaviorists. Their perspective is that we learn language kind of like a parrot does. We just copy what we hear. When we get it right, we got a reward, praise from a parent or just being understood. And we repeat that over and over until it becomes an automatic habit. Then you have the innatist view, which was made famous by the linguist Noam Chomsky. He argued that our brains are not blank slates at all. Instead, we're born with a sort of universal grammar, a biological blueprint that's hardwired for language right from birth, just like we're programmed to learn how to walk. And finally, there's the interactionist perspective. This one says, hey, it's not nature or nurture, it's a dynamic dance between the two. The idea is that our natural, inborn ability to learn is ignited and shaped by all the social interactions we have with the people around us. So when you boil it all down, these theories are really trying to answer a central question. Is language something we learn from the outside in, through copying and habits? Or is it something that grows from the inside out, following some kind of internal blueprint? Or is it a constant conversation between both? Okay, so how does all this apply when we try to learn a second language? Well, this is where things get a lot messier, and it helps explain why success can feel so much harder to come by than it was the first time around. See, unlike babies, we adults bring a completely different set of tools to the job. We have our advanced brains and a ton of knowledge about the world, which can definitely help. But we also bring baggage. We worry about making mistakes. We have the super strong habits of our first language, and our motivation can be all over the map.
But here's something that might surprise you. In spite of all those differences, research shows that second language learners still go through predictable stages of development, just like babies do. The big difference is that their journey is way more complex, and things like personality, natural aptitude, and social situations start to play a much, much bigger role in whether they succeed.
This leads us straight to the classroom and a really fundamental debate about the best way to teach a second language. And this whole conflict pretty much boils down to 2 opposing philosophies.
You really got 2 main camps. On one side, there's the get it right from the beginning approach. This is all about perfect grammar, and it treats errors like they're bad habits that have to be stamped out immediately. On the other side, you have the get it right in the end philosophy. This one is all about confident communication first, and it sees errors as a totally natural and even necessary part of learning. Okay, so with all that in mind, let's circle all the way back to those big questions we started with. It's time to bust some myths and see what the research actually says about how we learn languages best. We kicked things off with that super common belief that younger is always better, that if you don't start as a kid, you've pretty much missed your shot at being fluent. But the research, it tells a more interesting story. Turns out older learners are often more efficient in the beginning. They can actually learn faster than young kids. Success really has less to do with when you start and way more to do with the quality and the sheer amount of language you're exposed to over time. Then we asked about that language gene. Are some people just born with a special talent, leaving the rest of us in the dust? Well, the research says, yeah, aptitude for language learning is a real thing. It can help people learn faster. But, and this is a big but, it is not the whole story. Positive motivation, just plain old perseverance, and good teaching can help almost anybody reach their language goals, no matter what their natural talent is. And finally, we looked at that classic classroom rule. You have to correct every single mistake right away, or else bad habits will set in for good.
And on this one, the evidence is really clear. Errors are a natural and even a valuable part of learning. Now, getting feedback is absolutely vital for getting better, but the key isn't if you correct an error, but when. Feedback is only really useful when the learner is ready to actually understand it and use it. Timing is everything. So the big takeaway here is that learning a language isn't about finding one single magic bullet method. It's really about understanding the complex process itself, knowing the stages, embracing mistakes as part of the deal, and figuring out what motivates you personally. So the real question is, how will all of this change the way you go about learning your next language?